Hi everyone, so today I'm excited to review a bottle that I have not seen in quite a few years, but one that I was able to pick up today, and a bottle that I'm very excited about despite its relatively low proof. We're going to review Evan Williams Single Barrel Vintage 2015. Just the fact that I'm holding this bottle in my hand is kind of amazing because this thing just virtually disappeared for definitely a few years. I believe the last 2 years this was only a Kentucky release, and prior to that it used to pop around every year, and now it has been released in some states, and New Jersey being one of them. So just to back up, this is the Evan Williams single barrel version of their black label, and basically it's sort of around the same proof, a couple of tenths of proof higher. But what this is it's, as they say on the label, it's the only single barrel bourbon bottled with a vintage date to provide the proof of age. So on the front it says Put in Oak, in this case 2015, and then on the back, which I will show before I pop it open, it's handwritten, and it says the date that this was barreled, the barrel number, and then the date it was bottled. It's all handwritten, or it certainly looks handwritten. So that's kind of like when you think about a bottle of wine with a vintage date. That's kind of like this. So you see a bottle of wine, vintage a certain year. This is vintage 2015. So the story for Evan Williams Single Barrel goes back quite a few years with me. It definitely was one of the earlier bottles that I used to enjoy earlier in my bourbon journey. And every year, and not every store would have this, but there was definitely a store or two that I would go to, and I'd usually try to always pick this up once a year when it was around, because then it would disappear for a while once the bottles were all sold. And I remember having, I believe, I think I had a 2006 vintage 8. I know I had I think the last one may have been the 2011 or the 2012. I think I might have had that. It's possible. I don't know if it's the 13th. So I think basically the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, in 2022, I think they said it was a Kentucky only release. It should have been around then, but I think the last vintage was maybe around 2011. I think might have been the last one I had, possibly 2012. Let's just call it that. But it was definitely because of distribution availability and I guess it was the distribution chain between the Evan Williams 1783 and then the black label, all coming from the same kind of pool of bourbon, even though these are single barrels. I think they had it basically kind of limited to Kentucky only. And apparently this year, I read some stuff that they just thought this was so good. And they also had kind of an extra amount of supply this particular year. So instead of being Kentucky only this year, I don't know if this is going to be next year, but this year they then released this to several states. I knew New Jersey was going to be one of them, New York, and a few other states. So I know it's definitely not all. So basically, I hadn't seen that. And today on the bottom shelf at a Bottle King near my office, boom, it was there. And 2 bottles were sitting there literally on the bottom shelf. So the story with this program, this debuted in 1995. And it was always, very, very unique, and still is. I do believe there are bottles that certainly have, especially store picks, that have a lot of information, but that is their claim that that is the only single barrel with a vintage date, and certainly by saying by that stamp on the front is very very powerful, and I think it's great. I love the handwritten writing on the back. I love reading the label here and all that stuff. So really quick, details are as follows. This is Heaven Hill Company, Heaven Hill Distillery, barrel number 662. This was barreled on December 15th, 2015, and it was bottled on April 3rd, 2024. So just a little over a month ago this was put in. So basically, in other words, this was aged for 8 years and approximately 4 months. They say 7 to 8 years as general, so this one got, it was 8 years and a few months extra. So call it 8 years, 4 months. The proof, and this is really my major issue with this, and I'm going to get into that in a second. The proof is 86.6 proof. Now, when I was having this bottle, when I had this prior to, earlier in my bourbon journey, 86 to 100 proof was really where I was at, and I didn't like the higher proofs then. So this was okay. Even at that time, I thought this was, certainly on the weaker side, but it was definitely closer to my zone. I've since, certainly in the last year, I've gotten into higher proofs, higher rye bourbons, but definitely higher proofs. So I'm kind of curious how I might feel about this now, but just, it's still, even despite that, it's just still exciting, because this was always a fun bottle to have, and I just love the vintage and all the dates on it. I think it's really, really cool. But I am curious how I feel about that now. Price point, I got a very good deal. I mean, it hasn't changed that much from a few years ago. It was, almost around $34 basically in the store. I remember being around 30 back in, the last time I had it. So I think it was a very good, reasonable price for a vintage single barrel like that. Despite the proof, I think that's a fair price. The mash bill is the same mash bill as Heaven Hill in general, Evan Williams, all the Heaven Hill products that I'm aware of. That are the rye bourbons. Use 78% corn, 12% rye, 10% malted barley. So again, it's a single barrel version in the sense of the Evan Williams Black, which is just exactly 80 proof. This is 86.6 proof. And that one is aged approximately 4 to 5 years. So basically you got around double the proof on this one. And again, this is a single barrel. And every one of these is unique. Every year is different. And the years that it ages, it's interesting if you can actually collect these, because it kind of covers all different climate zones, temperatures. It's kind of like wine. It's the same thing. So I'm going to crack this open right now. And by the way, before I go to that, it's got one of these, almost looks like a Knob Creek tab. It's got a little bit of the wax like Maker's Mark, but this actually looks like a little bit of a Knob Creek tab. So I'm going to show you the bottle quick and I'm going to put it in a glass. So really quick, here's the front. And this is the back. You can see barreled on 12-15-15, barrel number 662, bottled on 4-3-24. Absolutely love that cork pop, and it's the only Evan Williams that has a cork. Always like that about it, like the wax seal, the whole deal. So let's get right into the nose. Okay, very classic bourbon. Light, doesn't feel totally a weak nose, but not overpowering. Your typical vanilla caramel all coming right out of it. Let's give this a taste. Cheers. Well, right off the bat, there is a certain Evan Williams profile, and I've noted it in different degrees in the black label, which is 86 proof, the white label 100 proof, and the Evan Williams 1783, which used to be 86 and now it's 90. But this is a little bit smoother. Maybe a little bit more oak taste from being aged probably twice as long as that. It's a nice light bourbon. Now, I'm having this 86.6 proof, coming back to this a few years. I thought it was light then, even despite being in the 86, 100 proof. Now I'm liking higher bourbons. I do wish the proof was a little higher, and I can confirm that again now. However, it's actually a very nice color on that, too. Definitely looks darker than what the standard Evan Williams would be. Let's try this again. I think it is a very smooth taste. It's, there's nothing, I wouldn't say there's anything exceptional about this, but it is a nice sipper, a nice bourbon. Well, the classic vanilla caramel all coming through. I wouldn't call it super complex, but again, a vintage single barrel, 8+ year bourbon for just a few dollars more than $30, I think $33, $34 with the date and everything. And actually, very nice legs on this. Very nice. So this is definitely more complex than the standard 80 proof, 86 proof at Black Label. Lower proof than the 100 proof, the bottled and bond. But this is aged 8+ years. This has a very nice taste to it. So it's nothing crazy with proof. It's a nice, easy sipper. This would be a very good bourbon. Definitely can say again, for someone like me at the time, which I was a beginning bourbon drinker, but this would be a very good beginning bourbon drinker. But you know what? Even for someone who's been drinking bourbon for some time, it's not going to knock your socks off with proof, complexity, but this is a very nice tasting bourbon, very nice, easy sipper. And for the price and its uniqueness in terms of its vintage dating, this is nice. And I'm not disappointed at all that I got it, even liking higher proofs. Wish the proof was higher, yes, but this is you can find this. This is definitely a good buy. I would get this any day. And it's always kind of fun to find, if you can find a date that's meaningful to you when it was either barreled or bottled, that's even a plus. Cheers. More reviews to come. Take care. Thanks for watching.